routes is very important because that is the one channel through to Hamas. But I think there is a recognition here that this is not going to stop until the belligerents are ready, and in particular until Israel feels that it's got enough in the way of its aims, blocking the tunnels, destroying the tunnels and so on, and that Hamas, for its part, has got some kind of wording in some kind of agreement about the addressing of this key issue of the economic blockade. So it's really, I think, just a coordination of the international community's response, making it clear that they're ready to move in and back any, plan when it emerges, but that's not going to emerge until Israel and Hamas give clear signals, particularly Israel gives a clear signal that it's ready.
Now, of course, there's been a huge loss of life. We're looking at over 600 people killed in Gaza. In France, there's a large Muslim population. How has it been covered there?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you should say that. This afternoon here in Paris, the focus is going to shift away from diplomacy and very much on to protests. I mean, there have been a lot of protests by the pro-Palestinian community, if you like, here in France, some of which have been perfectly peaceful and proper and in due order, but some of which, it has to be said, have really broken out into street fights and into attacks in some places, or attempts to attack Jewish targets. There's a place called Sarcelles just outside Paris, where the Jewish community felt that it was very much in the firing line, even here in Paris. There are people who are saying that it's developed into a very worrying situation, and the government has banned a couple of marches for fear of it then tipping over into violence. And there is, or there was planned to be a demonstration here this afternoon in Paris. It's been banned for that very reason. And we're watching to see if people turn up. In any case, it is quite a tense situation.
Well, Hugh Schofield in Paris, thank you. The first team of Pakistani mountaineers to attempt to scale the country's highest peak, K2, have just reached the summit. It's the world's second highest peak. The expedition is being backed by Italian experts, recognising the role of Pakistani porters in the first successful ascent of the mountain by Italian climbers 60 years ago. Ashraf Aman is a Pakistani mountaineer and the first Pakistani man to reach the summit of K2 in 1977. He trained some of the climbers and described why K2 is difficult to climb.
Depend on weather. Weather change very quickly on K2 because the monsoons are coming from west. Most of them, the Pakistani climbers, they are well trained. They've been climbing with different peaks every year. They know how to climb, but the problem is equipment is very expensive. When I was climbing, we had a breakfast midnight, and 1 a.m. we start for climbing. Luckily, the weather was good, so I climbed. My luck was with good weather. It's not technically difficult, just need strength and height.
Well, that was Ashraf Aman. Now I'm joined by Naresh Kaushik in our studio here. Now, Naresh, tell me, how difficult is it to climb K2?
Well, K2 is one of the most difficult, if not the difficult mountain in the world. Although it is the second highest, it's second highest after Mount Everest, but Mount Everest, people say, is not that difficult because the fatality rate in K2 is much, much higher than Everest. 1 in 4 mountaineers who try to scale K2 end up dying, and it's more difficult to come back, and that is the challenge for this Pakistani team, first ever team which has successfully scaled this. And this is actually quite a good thing for Pakistan because individually, as Ashraf himself was saying, that many Pakistanis have done it individually, but this is the first time a Pakistani-led team, although it was backed by the Pakistani government and the Italians, but this is quite an achievement.
Well, Naresh Kaushik, thank you for that update on this great achievement by Pakistani mountaineers out at K2. You've been listening to the newsroom from the BBC World Service with me, Susanna Mendonça. A reminder of the main news. Israel and Hamas have paused hostilities in Gaza for humanitarian reasons. Gaza health officials say dozens of bodies have been recovered since the truce began. That's it for now from the newsroom, and you can stay with us for an update of
the BBC World Service.
To mark 100 years since the outbreak of the First World War, the BBC World Service is presenting a series of debates looking at the legacy of war. For the third programme, we're in the Imperial War Museum in London, examining the psychology of warfare. We'll look at the complex loyalties that drove men to fight in their millions, and how the mechanised slaughter and suffering of the trenches of Europe dehumanised soldiers and destroyed minds.
These are men whose minds the dead have ravished. Memory fingers in their hair of murders, multitudinous murders they once witnessed.
How did the shock of industrial war shape and reshape our understanding of the human mind? Join me, Amanda Vickery, for the next debate in The War That Changed the World. Online from the 2nd of August at bbcworldservice.com.
Right, your best lady driver joke, please.
OK, Muckle. You have 6 women driving 6 different cars. How many parking spaces do they need?
6?
No, 12.
Oh, I see, because they need more space to park. It's flagrantly sexist.
Very sexist.
Problematic from a feminist point of view, but a good reference to 2 trends that we'll be covering this week. One from China and one about women against feminism trending across the world. More on those on BBC Trending after the news.
BBC News with Jerry Smith. A 12-hour pause in hostilities has come into effect in Gaza after an agreement between the Israeli government and Hamas. Israel said it would continue operations to destroy tunnels used by Palestinian militants during this time. Gaza health officials say dozens of bodies have been recovered since the truce began. Foreign ministers from the US, several EU countries, Turkey and Qatar are meeting in Paris to discuss ways of achieving a longer truce in Gaza. Russia has said additional sanctions imposed on it by the European Union over the Ukraine crisis will jeopardise international cooperation on security. Earlier, the EU expanded its blacklist of Russian individuals and organisations to be subject to asset freezes and travel bans. 40 military police officers from the Netherlands have arrived in eastern Ukraine to help search for bodies from the Malaysian airliner apparently shot down there 9 days ago. They're joining a team of Australian police hoping to travel from the city of Kharkiv to the crash site. The Nigerian government says all points of entry into the country have been placed on red alert following confirmation that a Liberian man, who died in a hospital in Lagos, was carrying the Ebola virus. It's the first confirmed case in Nigeria. The UN Security Council has described the food crisis in South Sudan as the worst in the world. It appealed to countries who had pledged more than $600 million to make good on their promises. For the first time, a team of 6 Pakistani mountaineers have successfully scaled the country's highest peak, K2. The expedition marks the 60th anniversary of the first ascent to the mountain by Italian climbers in 1954. A judge in the northern English city of Manchester is being investigated after he was accused of falling asleep during a child rape trial. The case was halted and must now start again. BBC News.
All right, guys, have a seat. Anne-Marie, can you sit in that specially decorated chair that I've got specially for you?
What, the pink one?
Yeah, pink tassels,
with all the
pink
horrible-looking
flowers.
pink stuff all over it.
Well, it's for you because you're a girl.
What?
Yeah. Actually, look, I'm perfectly aware that's a sexist thing to say, and I'm only doing it to make a reference to a story. Just like this. Hey, Anne-Marie, did you park in that special pink parking space that we got for you, extra wide?
I don't drive into work, Muckle. No one drives into work.
You're a lady
here.
driver. Do you get it extra wide?
No, Muckle, have you ever heard of feminism? This is completely ridiculous what you're saying to me.
I have heard of feminism, and of course I wouldn't really get you to park in a pink parking spot. But that's a reference to something that genuinely trended all over the world this week, didn't it, Vincent?
Absolutely. I mean, this picture is widely shared on the Chinese internet as well.
Right, and it was a place in Dalian in China that actually had ladies-only parking spaces.
They really did, yeah.
But then again, you know, not all women agree about what counts as sexist. In fact, some women fight strongly against feminism. That's a story told by one Tumblr and Facebook pages that went huge on the internet this week. More on that one in a minute. I'm Mukul Devachand, and this is BBC Trending from the team that highlights social media trends of note all week long on our website, bbc.com/trending, and here on the World Service. And with me, today's trending team, sat in your very nice chairs. Can you tell me who you are?
I'm Victor Lee from the Chinese section of the BBC World Service.
And I'm Anne-Marie Tomczak from BBC Trending.
Okay, so all that global outrage with this parking spaces in China trend is not actually unexpected, because calls for gender equality, the debates over feminism, they're like a staple thing on the internet. We see them all the time. We see them a lot when we're talking with BBC Trending. For example, the internet turned this track. That's the Beastie Boys, and they made it into this. This is the YouTube remix by Sizzy Rocket, a 22-year-old from New York City. See both of you tapping your feet there. But the internet does seem to be unanimous on one point, which is that feminism is important. But this week it turned out that not every woman online agrees.
No, well, not according to Women Against Feminism. That's a Tumblr blog that went viral, and it's where women have been posting pictures of themselves holding placards outlining reasons why they don't need feminism. But it's not just a Tumblr blog and photo page. There's also a Facebook page with over 33,000 comments on it just this week. And there's a hashtag on Twitter too, 52,000 uses of that hashtag.
It's like this massive sudden surge of anti-feminism. But who are these women casting off feminism, and what is their problem with feminism? We've spoken to some of them.
The concept is a great idea. 50 years ago, it was really beneficial to society, but now it victimizes women.
The patriarchy is something that you get to blame for all the problems in your life. That doesn't exactly encourage accountability. It doesn't encourage responsibility. If men have this wonderful system that they've created to benefit themselves, how strange is it that women still live longer?
If I want to stay at home with my children and look after my children, that's my choice, and that's between me and my partner.
Okay, so it's interesting. Anne-Marie, who are these women? Where are they from, the women posting these pictures?
Well, they're from all over the world, but especially in the US, places like Texas and California. And the woman who set up the page, she refused to give us an interview because she said she got harassed online by feminists. But we've spoken to her via Facebook.
It started as a rant blog against my disagreements with how modern feminism was behaving. It was also a reaction against what I'd call the mean girls of online feminism. The whole point was to say that feminism had become toxic and was hurting women with its victim narrative and our relationships with men.
So her problem is with this modern internet version of feminism, but where did that come from? I spoke to Rhiannon Lucy Coslet. She's one of the women behind The Bagenda, which is a blog and a book looking at feminism and the media.
There have been very many different waves of feminism, starting with, the suffragettes regarded as the first wave. And then in the 60s, 70s and 80s, things were kind of much more geared towards legal changes. What you're seeing now is a new generation of young women who perhaps haven't come across the idea of feminism before and are being confronted with it on the internet, particularly on websites such as Tumblr, which is mainly populated by teenagers. And, they're kicking back against what they see as quite an extreme political movement.
So that idea, which is that young women simply don't understand feminism, that's been taken up by feminists who are trying now to argue back. So Rebecca Brink, she's a feminist blogger in Chicago, is one of those. She made her own picture gallery to show what feminism is really about. I had a discussion with her and with a woman who single-handedly created the biggest buzz about women against feminism. That's at Judgy Bitch 1, a.k.a.
Nice
Janet
name.
Bloomfield, from Ontario, Canada. Now, she is responsible for 22% of the most influential tweets in this debate, so a lot of activity by her. They both join me down the line to discuss the clash of ideas, starting with feminist blogger Rebecca Brink.
We're just slinging mud at each other, and it's not productive.
Janet, is that toxic debate on social media the reason that you have gotten so involved in Women Against Feminism?
The toxicity runs one way, in my opinion. If you look at the hashtag Women Against Feminism, you will see lots of anti-feminist women explaining why it is that they feel the way they do. And in response, they get called stupid, you're ignorant, you just don't understand feminism, you're illiterate, you're uneducated. At no point do you see feminists saying, well, okay, here's why we don't think shared parenting is fair. Here's why we're getting rid of due process in campus courts. All you get is, oh, shut up, you're stupid. It's just a litany of insults against relatively young women who are asking for information.
Rebecca?
I actually have the Women Against Feminism Tumblr up here. There's one sarcastic photo that is right at the top. It reads, I need feminism because I'm too stupid and weak to make men respect me without it, and too ugly to control them. So here we have Women Against Feminism taking character shots at feminists for being stupid and ugly and weak. I've seen slut and whore all over Women Against Feminism. There are too many high emotions on both sides, and it's no longer productive. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about mudslinging.
Janet, what's your response to that?
I would say go back to the beginning of the hashtag, that it has gotten really fractious now. But that's a result of a feminist just going on the attack, exposing misogyny, basically, which is highly ironic, that a woman that's supposed to be about supporting women can't engage in a dialogue with other women without calling them stupid.
So, Janet, is there anything that people like Rebecca could do to reach out to someone like yourself?
Talk about what feminists do. I'm not interested in your definition. I want to see your actions.
Rebecca, anything valid in that critique?
Yes. I think that it bears noting that we have a system set up in which so little of, for instance, the American Congress is made up of women, where we don't feel adequately represented.
You don't. I do.
Okay, so we can disagree. But when I'm in a country where rapes go underreported, where investigations of rapes rarely happen, where female genital mutilation is happening.
Male genital mutilation
I
is
absolutely
legal.
agree. I absolutely agree. I think that there's absolutely two sides to that story. There's two sides to every story. But what I'm saying is female genital mutilation is illegal in the United States, but it's still happening. There's poor law enforcement for rape victims, for assault victims. I mean, when you're living in a culture where you expect to be assaulted.
What?
Yes.
See, that's the kind of hysteria Women Against Feminism reject.
If I could please talk. Where we're taught to carry our keys in our hands. I mean, I know that this is anecdotal, but it is very widespread. And as much as you can laugh at it, these are valid, real experiences that women have.
Do you worry that feminists have lost a generation of women because of the way that these debates have played out?
I don't think so. I do think that the conversation is poorly held on social media, particularly Twitter. It's a complicated thing. It's bigger than 140 characters, and I wish that we could talk about it in a venue where knee-jerk reactionism wasn't so easy.
Well, guys, the debate continued in just as polarised a way after we recorded that.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Janet tweeted straight afterwards that Rebecca was an airhead. We also received a lot of comments on BBC Trending, on BBC's Facebook pages, after we made a video about the Women Against Feminism movement. You can watch the video at bbc.com/trending. So, Anne-Marie, feminism and all those other isms.
Yes, lots of isms.
Paint a picture. What is it like in our office?
It's hard to actually paint a picture because we talk about so many different trends, but to help you out and get a picture or an idea of that, here's India Rakison with a summary.
This week at BBC Trending, we spoke to YouTube vlogger Rebecca Brown.
Hey everyone.
Her 6-year selfie project documenting her battle with the hair-pulling disorder
trichotillomania
has gone viral and has now been watched over 5 million times. And after the Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 crash in Ukraine, thousands of people in the Netherlands have changed their Facebook and Twitter profiles to a black square in memory of the 193 Dutch people who were among those killed. And
a mystery on Brooklyn Bridge
has had Americans in a Twitter frenzy when the stars and stripes were replaced by 2 white flags. A whodunit unravelled online with people suspecting hipsters, cyclists, the French and aliens, of course. And Jews and Arabs around the world have been sharing loving images of coexistence in a social media campaign that calls for tolerance in the online conversation about the Gaza conflict. It uses the hashtag Jews and Arabs refuse to be enemies.
My mother is Jewish and my dad is Muslim. How can I be enemy of myself?
That was the week
at BBC Trending.
For me, that sums up a lot.
Now, Vincent from BBC Chinese. North Korea demands that its people pay complete devotion to Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un. And I guess they might expect a similar respect for him from the citizens of your country, which is their staunchest ally and the biggest bankroller, Communist China. But this week on the Chinese internet, they got something quite different, didn't they? They got this. So this is Little Apple by the Chopstick Brothers and used in an online video, which is pretty mad. Tell us about it.
Exactly. That's a backing track of a video posted on the Chinese video sharing website called Tencent. Now, as of today, this particular video has been watched more than 60 million times in China.
Right.
That's the entire population of the United Kingdom, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Has also been shared across the world. It's a mashed-up video poking fun at the North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, and I can see, okay, so it's basically this music and he's dancing.
It's pretty hilarious, actually. If you watch the video, you can see Kim Jong-un's face superimposed onto all sorts of existing images to show him dancing, doing kung fu, riding on the back of a pig.
Right, okay, so that's not particularly respectful to Mr. Kim, and nor is the name of the video.
It's called Fat Guy Kim III. Apparently, it's a reference to Kim Jong-un's rotund shape.
Okay, it's pretty funny and pretty sharp comedy. We found this interesting at BBC Trending, partly because it's not what we expected from China, because that's a country where people are normally quite respectful when talking about political leaders. We spoke to Steve Sang. He's a professor of Chinese studies at the University of Nottingham here in the UK. And he thinks the clearest political message the video sends out is that the relationship between China and North Korea is changing.
Previously, the Chinese government would have been much more careful about relationship with North Korea when they would really be careful not to provide any scope for the North Korean leaders to feel that the Chinese government were tolerating anything that were disrespectful of the Korean leaders. They have changed now. The North Korean leader has been very unhelpful to China in the last 2 or 3 years, particularly over the nuclear weapons and missile testing issues. So the Chinese government already sent its signals to the North Koreans.
But Vincent, the guy who created the video says, let's not read too much politics into it. It's mainly for fun.
Yes, and I think many of those who shared it too just thought that's just purely funny rather than a big political message.
Right, but underlying this is the question, is it easier for Chinese people perhaps to post something irreverent about a foreign leader than a Chinese leader? I ask because I gather this week reports have come in that there was this giant floating toad in the harbour in Beijing and was said to look a little bit like Jiang Zemin, the former Communist Party chief. Jokes about that trended on social media, but then reports about those jokes were taken down.
That's certainly what we hear at the moment, actually. If that's true, I think it probably shows that the authorities doesn't mind people poking fun at foreign leaders, as you said, while trying to keep its own image serious and intact.
Someone else we spoke to was Brother Sway. He's a comedian from Beijing who now lives in Seattle.
I started a 10-minute monologue telling the Chinese, do not come to America. This is the first thing that got me known or famous by the Chinese people. I remember the first sentence is, Chinese should never come to America because Americans shampoo their dogs and they don't taste right.
Okay, so Brother Sway is a comedian who uses the internet to broadcast his humour into China, and he's been so successful he now has a TV show in China, and he's been described as China's David Letterman. And he's learnt over the years how to navigate this tricky terrain that you're talking about, Vincent, within Chinese comedy.
I know there are several lines I have to watch. Number one, do not incite a rebellion. Okay, do not say things too hard to remind people it is the current system that is to blame. Number 3 is do not refer to or imply any specific names or leaders. I have to submit all my scripts to someone above to read line by line.
Do you think that social media has changed the nature of jokes, especially satire in China?
Absolutely. Before, ordinary people cannot tell jokes, and no place to tell jokes. And now, all of a sudden, you have a computer, you have an iPhone, you can talk to, you can write, you can email, you can Twitter, it's all yours. Everybody's equal on the same stage now. And that changed everything. It's a revolution.
All right, team. I was chairing this programme. I may not be the supreme leader of BBC Trending, but what jokes could you tell about me?
I have one for you, Muckle.
Okay.
How many spaces does it take Muckle Devachand to park a car?
I don't know. How many spaces does it take me to park a car?
1. See, I'm being fair and egalitarian.
Yes.
Not overly feminist.
That's what I say to that joke.
I've got a similar to the car. What happens to a wooden car with wooden engine and a wooden wheel?
I don't know.
It wouldn't go.
Oh, boom, 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 boom. Very good. All right, for more, perhaps deeper insights about social media, keep coming back to our videos and blog at bbc.com/trending all week long, and more here on the radio next week from the social media team, where the men and the women can parallel park in even the tiniest of spaces.
Muckle, can I remove all this horrible pink stuff now?
And you know you like pink stuff, Anne-Marie.
It's so pink and ruffly. I want to leave this room right now. Can I take this stuff off?
Off you go.
BBC. You're with the BBC.
I'm Rajan Datta.